Have you ever noticed how some people seem to move through life as if they have a secret compass, attracting opportunities, relationships, and abundance without breaking a sweat, while others, maybe even you, exhaust themselves pushing, planning, and hustling, only to watch everything they desire remain frustratingly out of reach? What if I told you that the difference between these two realities has nothing to do with how hard you work, how smart you are, or even how deserving you might be? What if the entire game changes when you understand that you're constantly broadcasting a signal, a specific frequency that's either magnetically pulling your desires toward you or unknowingly pushing them away? Think about this for a moment. Right now, in this very second, you're operating at a particular vibrational frequency. It's not something mystical or untouchable. It's as real as the thoughts running through your mind and the words leaving your lips. This frequency is like a radio station, constantly transmitting, and reality is the receiver picking up your signal and responding accordingly. When you're tuned to the right frequency, doors don't just open, they swing wide before you even approach them. The right people appear at precisely the right moment. Resources flow, synchronicities multiply. It's as if the universe itself conspires on your behalf. But here's where it gets fascinating. Most people have experienced this state at least once in their lives. Has this ever happened to you? Those magical periods where everything just clicked, where you felt lighter, more aligned, and suddenly life started cooperating with you instead of resisting you. During those moments, you weren't forcing anything. You weren't stressed or anxious. You were simply in a state of flow, riding a frequency that made reality respond to you differently. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Here's the frustrating part that I know you've experienced. That magical state never seems to last. One day you're gliding effortlessly through life, and the next day you're back to struggling, back to the grind, back to wondering why nothing works anymore. You stumbled into that frequency by accident, and because you never learned how to consciously access it and hold it, it slipped away like water through your fingers. The truth is, there are invisible mechanics at play, psychological and energetic principles that govern how reality responds to the signal you're transmitting. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. It's not about positive thinking or vision boards or any of the surface-level techniques you've already tried. It goes much deeper than that. Your frequency is composed of specific, tangible elements that you have complete control over. And when you understand how to align these elements, something extraordinary happens. You stop being the person who chases, and you become the person who attracts. You shift from pushing against reality to having reality come knocking at your door. So the question isn't whether reality will respond to you. It already is, every single moment. The real question is, what frequency are you broadcasting right now? And more importantly, are you aware that you're broadcasting it? Let me paint a picture for you. Think back to a moment in your life when everything just worked. Maybe it was a period of weeks, maybe just a few days. But you remember it clearly because it felt different from your normal experience. During that time, you weren't overthinking every decision or second-guessing yourself. You felt a sense of certainty, almost like you were being guided by an invisible hand. You thought of someone and they texted you moments later. You needed help with something and the perfect person appeared. You took action and doors opened easily, almost as if they'd been waiting for you to arrive. In those moments, you weren't operating from a place of desperation or lack. You weren't white-knuckling your way through life, trying to control every outcome. You were simply in alignment, and that alignment created a frequency that reality recognized and responded to. Synchronicities weren't random coincidences. They were confirmations that you were tuned to the right channel. Your energy was clear, your signal was strong, and the universe was reflecting that clarity back to you in tangible, undeniable ways. But here's where the hidden truth reveals itself, and this is the part most people never talk about because they don't understand the mechanics behind it. That state of flow, that magical frequency you stumbled into, it didn't last. One morning you woke up and the magic was gone. You were back to feeling stuck, back to forcing outcomes, back to wondering if you'd imagined the whole thing. The momentum you had built seemed to evaporate overnight, and suddenly you were pushing against life again instead of dancing with it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. I create content for people who are serious about understanding how frequency and consciousness actually work. Not just theory, but practical principles you can apply. Hit that subscribe button so you can continue this journey with me. Why does this happen? Why can't we stay in that frequency where everything flows? The answer lies in understanding that you didn't consciously create that state. You accidentally wandered into it. Maybe it was triggered by a moment of genuine joy, a decision you made without overthinking, or simply a period where you let go of control without realizing it. But because you never learned the behind-the-scenes mechanics of what was actually happening, you had no way to recreate it or sustain it. You were like someone who found a hidden door but didn't memorize the path back to it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this, because understanding this transformation changes everything. Most people spend their entire lives fluctuating between these two states, brief periods of alignment followed by long stretches of struggle. They assume it's just how life works, that ups and downs are inevitable, that consistency is reserved for other people who somehow got lucky. But that's not the truth. The truth is that your frequency isn't fixed. It's not something that happens to you based on external circumstances. It's something you're actively creating every single moment through two very specific channels that you have complete control over, even if you don't realize it yet. These two channels are constantly broadcasting, whether you're paying attention or not. They're sending out a signal that reality reads with perfect accuracy, and this signal determines what shows up in your life and what stays perpetually out of reach. When these two channels are in harmony, broadcasting the same message, you become magnetic. You enter that flow state where opportunities find you, where the right circumstances align without force, where your desires seem to manifest almost effortlessly. But when these channels contradict each other, when one is saying yes while the other is saying no, you create static. And in that static, nothing can clearly transmit or receive. The impact of this contradiction is profound, and most people live their entire lives in this state of mixed signals without ever realizing it. They wonder why they can't break through, why success feels so elusive, why their dreams remain just out of reach despite all their effort and good intentions. The journey from where you are now to where you want to be isn't about adding more effort or discovering some secret technique. It's about revealing what's already there, understanding the frequency you're currently broadcasting, and learning how to consciously shift it. If you're starting to see how this applies to your own life, write in the comments. I see the pattern now. So, what exactly are these two channels that determine your frequency? This is where the revelation truly begins, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. The first channel is your thoughts, the internal dialogue, the mental movies you play on repeat, the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what's possible for you. The second channel is your words, not just what you say out loud to others, but what you whisper to yourself in private moments, the language you use to describe your reality when no one else is listening. Here's what most people don't realize. These two channels are supposed to work together like a finely tuned instrument. When they're in harmony, they create a clear, powerful signal that reality has no choice but to respond to. But here's where the hidden truth gets uncomfortable. For most people, these channels are in constant conflict, broadcasting completely opposite messages, and this contradiction is the invisible force keeping their desires at arm's length. Let me show you how this plays out in real life, because I guarantee you've done this without even recognizing it. You wake up in the morning and you tell yourself, "Today is going to be different. I'm going to attract abundance. I'm open to receiving." Your conscious mind is genuinely trying to shift your frequency, and in that moment you believe what you're saying, but then you check your bank account, see a number that makes your stomach tighten, and without thinking, you say to yourself, "I can't afford that. Money is so tight right now. Why is it always like this?" Or someone invites you somewhere, and you automatically respond, "I wish I could, but things are really tough financially." Do you see what just happened? Your conscious mind was broadcasting one frequency, abundance, openness, possibility. But your unconscious mind, operating through your habitual words and automatic responses, was broadcasting the exact opposite: lack, limitation, scarcity. And here's the crucial part that changes everything. When there's a conflict between your conscious intention and your unconscious programming, the unconscious always wins. Not because it's stronger, but because it's been running the show for so much longer that its signal is deeper, more ingrained, more automatic. This is the psychological dynamic that governs whether your desires manifest or remain perpetually out of reach. It's not about whether you deserve what you want or whether the universe is listening. It's about whether your inner narrative and your spoken language are aligned or contradicting each other. When you say one thing consciously but believe something else unconsciously, you're essentially giving reality two sets of instructions simultaneously. And reality, being the perfect mirror that it is, reflects back confusion because that's what you're transmitting: confusion, mixed signals, internal conflict. The impact of this misalignment extends far beyond just delayed manifestation. It actually creates a repelling force. You become like a magnet that's constantly switching polarity, one moment attracting what you want, the next moment pushing it away. This is why you might experience brief moments of progress, followed by inexplicable setbacks. It's not bad luck or a cosmic punishment. It's the natural consequence of broadcasting contradictory frequencies. Behind the scenes of every transformation story, every breakthrough, every moment when someone's life suddenly shifted from struggle to flow, there's this fundamental realization. They became aware of the split between what they consciously wanted and what they unconsciously believed. And more importantly, they learned how to bridge that gap, to bring these two aspects of their mind into alignment so they could broadcast one clear, unified signal. The journey from where you are to where you want to be isn't about adding more techniques or strategies to your arsenal. It's about recognizing the invisible mechanics that have been operating behind the curtain all along. Your thoughts and words aren't just random expressions, they're programming tools, constantly shaping your frequency and instructing reality on what to deliver back to you. Every sentence you speak, every mental picture you replay, every story you tell yourself about your limitations or your possibilities, all of it is contributing to the signal you're broadcasting right now in this moment. If this is starting to click for you, drop a comment saying, "I'm ready to align." So let's talk about what's really happening beneath the surface of your everyday experience. Right now, at this very moment, you're not just sitting there passively observing life. You're actively participating in a constant exchange with reality itself. Every thought that crosses your mind, every word that leaves your lips, every emotional undercurrent running through your body, all of it is creating a frequency, a vibrational signature that's broadcasting outward like a radio tower, sending signals into the atmosphere. The fascinating part is that this isn't a metaphor or some abstract spiritual concept. This is actually how your psychology works. Your mind is constantly organizing information, filtering experiences, and interpreting events based on the frequency you're operating at. When you're broadcasting fear, lack, and limitation, your mind literally filters out opportunities and possibilities that don't match that signal. You could walk right past the exact person you need to meet, scroll past the perfect opportunity, dismiss the idea that could change everything, not because these things aren't there, but because your frequency isn't tuned to recognize them. Reality isn't withholding anything from you, it's responding to you. With perfect precision, reflecting back exactly what you're transmitting. If you're broadcasting doubt, reality shows you reasons to doubt. If you're broadcasting unworthiness, reality presents situations that confirm you're not enough. If you're broadcasting scarcity, reality delivers more experiences of not having enough. This isn't punishment or bad luck. It's simply the law of resonance in action, like attracts like. Frequency matches frequency. But here's where this gets really interesting. And this is the part that most people miss, even when they understand the basic concept. You can't fake your frequency. You can't just paste positive affirmations over deep-seated beliefs and expect reality to suddenly shift. Your true frequency isn't what you consciously think or what you say when you're trying to manifest something. Your true frequency is what you automatically default to when you're not paying attention. The thoughts that arise spontaneously, the words that come out without. Filtering, the emotional patterns that activate under pressure. This is why someone can spend years doing visualization exercises, repeating mantras, and creating vision boards without seeing any real change in their life. They're consciously trying to broadcast one frequency, but unconsciously they're still running the same old program. And the unconscious signal, being deeper and more consistent, is what reality actually responds to. It's like trying to tune in to a different radio station while the original station keeps playing in the background at full volume. The new station might be there, but you can't hear it clearly enough for it to make a difference. The transformation happens when you start catching yourself in the act of broadcasting the frequency you don't want. It requires becoming almost obsessively aware of the gap between what you say you want and what you're actually communicating through your daily thoughts and language. This awareness is uncomfortable because it reveals all the ways you've been sabotaging yourself without realizing it. But this discomfort is necessary. It's the crack that lets the light in, the moment when real change becomes possible. Think about a specific desire you have right now. Maybe it's financial abundance, maybe it's a fulfilling relationship, maybe it's vibrant health or meaningful work. Now ask yourself honestly, what frequency am I broadcasting about this desire most of the time? Am I broadcasting confidence and expectation? Or am I broadcasting doubt and desperation? Am I speaking as if it's already mine? Or am I speaking from a place of lacking it? Because reality isn't responding to your occasional positive thoughts. It's responding to your dominant frequency, the signal you're broadcasting most consistently throughout your day. If something in this video resonated with you, if you felt that shift happening while you were listening, go ahead and hit that like button. It lets me know this message is reaching the right people and helps others find it when they need it most. The hidden truth is that you've been creating your reality all along, not through conscious intention, but through unconscious patterns. Every limitation you're experiencing, every door that seems closed, every opportunity that passed you by, all of it correlates directly to the frequency you've been broadcasting, often without knowing you were doing it. And if you created this reality unconsciously, imagine what becomes possible when you learn to do it consciously, with full awareness and deliberate intention. Write in the comments, "I'm becoming aware." Now let me ask you to do something that might feel a little uncomfortable, but it's necessary for what comes next. I want you to think of one specific thing you've been wanting for a long time. Not a vague wish or a someday maybe dream, but something concrete that you've actively pursued. Maybe it's the financial freedom you've been working toward for years. Maybe it's finding a partner who truly sees and understands you. Maybe it's the career breakthrough that keeps seeming just within reach, but never quite materializing. Maybe it's healing from something that's been weighing on your body or your spirit. Whatever it is, hold it in your mind right now. Feel the weight of it, the longing attached to it, the frustration of not having it yet, despite all your efforts. This desire, this specific thing you're thinking of, is about to become your most valuable teacher, because embedded within this unfulfilled desire is a complete map of the frequency you've been broadcasting, and more importantly, it reveals exactly where the disconnect lies between what you want and what you're actually calling into your life. Here's what most people never consider: the very fact that this desire remains unfulfilled isn't random. It's not because the timing isn't right, or because you don't deserve it, or because the universe has other plans. The delay itself is information. It's feedback. Your delayed manifestation is trying to show you something about the signal you're sending, about the frequency you're operating at when you think about this desire, talk about it, or take action toward it. Let me walk you through what's really happening behind the scenes. When you think about this desire, what's the dominant emotion that comes with it? Is it excitement and anticipation? Or is it anxiety and fear? Is it a feeling of, yes, this is coming? Or is it, please, I need this so badly? Because that emotional quality is everything. It's the carrier wave of your frequency. The words you use might say, I want abundance. But if the emotion underneath is desperation, then desperation is what you're broadcasting. And desperation, by its very nature, is a frequency of lack. It says, I don't have this, I'm incomplete without it, I'm afraid it won't come. Reality doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to your state of being. When you approach your desire from a place of need, you're confirming to reality that you're in a state of not having. And reality, being the perfect mirror that it is, continues to reflect that state back to you. You get more circumstances that match the frequency of not having, of needing, of lacking. This is why trying harder often makes things worse, because the trying itself is saturated with the frequency of struggle, which just generates more things to struggle against. Now think about the language you use when this desire comes up in conversation or in your own mind. Do you say when this happens or if this happens? Do you speak about it as if it's inevitable or as if it's uncertain? Do you catch yourself complaining about its absence more than you celebrate its approach? These linguistic patterns aren't just words, they're commands you're giving to your unconscious mind, instructions about what to expect and what to create more of. The hidden revelation here is that your unfulfilled desire has been serving a purpose. It's been showing you, with perfect clarity, where your frequency doesn't match what you're asking for. Every day it remains out of reach is another day you're being given the opportunity to examine the signal you're broadcasting and make a different choice. The universe isn't withholding it from you. You're unconsciously keeping it at a distance by maintaining a frequency that can't receive it. This might sound harsh, but it's actually the most empowering truth you could discover. Because if you've been unconsciously creating the delay, that means you have the power to consciously create the breakthrough. The moment you recognize that your desire is a mirror showing you your own frequency, everything shifts. You stop blaming external circumstances. You stop waiting for the perfect conditions. You start taking responsibility for the signal you're sending and making deliberate adjustments to bring it into alignment with what you actually want. Drop a comment if you're recognizing this pattern. I see what I've been doing. So once you recognize this pattern in your own life, the next question naturally becomes, what exactly is governing this exchange between your frequency and what shows up in your reality? And this is where we need to talk about something that operates beneath the surface of everything you experience. Invisible laws that are as real and consistent as the law of gravity, but far less understood. These aren't the kind of laws you'll find written in textbooks or taught in schools. They're fundamental principles about how consciousness interacts with reality, how your inner state directly influences your outer circumstances. And here's what makes them so powerful. They're always operating. Right now, as you're listening to this, these laws are at work. When you go to sleep tonight, they'll still be working. When you wake up tomorrow, they'll be responding to every signal you send out, every thought you think, every word you speak. Think about gravity for a moment. You don't have to believe in gravity for it to work. You don't have to understand the physics behind it. You don't have to be consciously aware of it. It's simply there, constantly operating, pulling everything toward the center of the earth, whether you acknowledge it or not. These invisible laws work the same way. They don't care whether you believe in them, whether you understand them, or whether you're paying attention. They're responding to your frequency every single moment, organizing your reality based on the signal you're transmitting. The difference is that with gravity, the effect is immediate and obvious. You drop something and it falls. But with these laws governing frequency and manifestation, there's often a delay between the signal and the physical manifestation, which is why most people never connect the dots. They broadcast a frequency of lack on Monday, and when abundance doesn't show up on Tuesday, they assume the laws aren't working or don't apply to them, but the laws are working perfectly. They're just working on a timescale that requires patience and consistency to observe. Here's what's happening behind the scenes every moment of every day. Your thoughts are generating electromagnetic patterns in your brain. Your emotions are creating chemical responses in your body. Your words are vibrating through the air and, more importantly, reinforcing neural pathways in your mind. All of this creates a cumulative frequency, a consistent signal that reality reads and responds to. And reality's response isn't random or selective. It's lawful, predictable, and absolutely precise. When you understand this, it changes the entire game. Because most people live their lives as if they're victims of circumstances, as if things just happen to them randomly, as if some external force is deciding what they get and don't get. But the truth is far more empowering and initially far more unsettling. You're not a victim of circumstance. You're the primary creator of your circumstances through the frequency you've been broadcasting, often unconsciously, for years or even decades. These invisible laws don't judge the quality of your frequency. They don't determine whether your signal is good or bad, helpful or harmful. They simply respond. If you broadcast fear, they organize circumstances that give you something to fear. If you broadcast unworthiness, they arrange situations that confirm you're not worthy. If you broadcast abundance, they align opportunities that reinforce abundance. The law itself is neutral. It's a mechanism, a force of nature, responding to whatever input you provide. Now, I want to go even deeper into this because understanding the mechanics is one thing, but recognizing how this plays out in your specific life is where transformation actually happens. Think about the patterns you see repeating in your life. The same type of relationship problems showing up with different people. The same financial challenges appearing in different forms. The same career obstacles materializing in various situations. These aren't coincidences. They're not bad luck. They're the visible effects of an invisible cause, a consistent frequency you've been broadcasting that these laws are faithfully responding to and reflecting back to you in your everyday experience. The impact of recognizing this cannot be overstated, because once you see that these laws are always operating, always responding, always creating effects based on your signal, you can no longer pretend you're not part of the equation. You can no longer wait for external circumstances to change before you change your frequency. You realize that the only way to change what's showing up in your life is to change the signal you're sending out. If this is landing for you, right. The laws are always working. And here's where this gets really fascinating, because it explains something you've probably witnessed in your own life that never quite made sense. You've seen people who seem to effortlessly attract what they want while putting in minimal effort. And you've seen others who work themselves to exhaustion, chasing the same thing and never quite catching it. On the surface, it looks unfair. It looks like some people are just luckier or more blessed or born under better stars. But when you understand frequency, you realize something entirely different is happening. Let me give you a concrete example. Two people decide they want to build a successful business. They both attend the same workshops, read the same books, follow the same strategies, put in the same hours. From the outside, their actions look identical, but one person's business takes off almost immediately, while the other struggles for years, barely scraping by despite doing all the right things. What's the difference? It's not the strategy. It's not the effort. It's not even the skill level. The difference is the signal each person is broadcasting while they're taking those actions. The person whose business flourishes is operating from a frequency of certainty. When they think about their business, they feel a quiet confidence, an inner knowing that success is inevitable. When they speak about it, their language reflects ownership and expectation. They say things like, "when this grows," not "if this works." When they encounter obstacles, they see them as temporary challenges to navigate, not as evidence that they're failing. Their entire inner state is broadcasting, "I'm already successful, I'm just watching it unfold in physical form." The other person, despite taking the same external actions, is broadcasting an entirely different signal. When they think about their business, there's an undercurrent of anxiety. They're constantly checking metrics, desperately hoping for signs of success, worried that it might all fall apart. When they speak about it, you can hear the doubt beneath their words. They say things like, "I'm trying so hard, and I hope this works out, and I don't know why nothing's happening yet." Their inner state is broadcasting, "I'm not sure this will work. I'm afraid I'm not enough. Please let this succeed because I need it to." Both people want the same outcome. Both are working toward the same goal, but their frequencies couldn't be more different. And reality, responding to frequency rather than effort, delivers completely different results. The person broadcasting certainty receives circumstances that validate certainty. Opportunities appear. The right people show up. Resources flow. The person broadcasting doubt and desperation receives circumstances that match that frequency. Obstacles multiply. Opportunities slip through their fingers. The right connections never quite materialize. This is the hidden mechanism behind every success story and every tale of prolonged struggle. It's not about who works harder or who wants it more. It's about who's broadcasting the frequency that matches what they're asking for. And here's the part that changes everything. This frequency isn't about faking confidence or pretending everything's fine when it's not. It's about genuinely shifting your inner state, your true vibrational signature, so that what you're broadcasting unconsciously aligns with what you're consciously trying to create. The journey from struggle to flow isn't about learning better strategies or working smarter. Those things can help, but they're secondary. The primary transformation happens when you recognize that your inner signal, the totality of your thoughts, emotions, and language, is what's creating your outer results. Two people can be standing in the exact same situation, facing the same circumstances, and one will see possibility while the other sees limitation. Not because reality is different for each of them, but because their frequency determines what they're able to perceive and therefore what they're able to access. Reality isn't selective about who it responds to. It responds to everyone equally based on the signal they're broadcasting. The person who seems blessed with good fortune isn't lucky. They're simply broadcasting a frequency that makes them magnetic to opportunities. The person who seems cursed with bad luck isn't being punished. they're broadcasting a frequency that makes them repellent to the very things they're chasing. Leave a comment saying, "I'm shifting my signal." So now that you can see how two people with the same goal can get wildly different results based purely on their frequency, let's talk about what this reveals about the nature of reality itself. Because once you understand this, you'll never look at your circumstances the same way again. Reality isn't something happening to you, it's something happening through you, with you, because of you. It's not an external force imposing conditions on your life. It's a mirror constantly reflecting back the exact frequency you're broadcasting. This mirror doesn't judge. It doesn't decide you deserve better or worse. It doesn't play favorites or hold grudges. It simply shows you what you're being. If you walk up to a mirror frowning, the mirror shows you a frown. If you smile, the mirror smiles back. It's instant, accurate, and completely neutral. Reality works the same way, except the reflection isn't immediate in the physical sense. There's a time delay that makes it harder to see the direct connection between what you're broadcasting and what's showing up. But make no mistake, the connection is there. Every circumstance you're experiencing right now, every relationship dynamic, every financial situation, every health condition, every opportunity that came or didn't come, all of it is a reflection of the frequency you've been holding, often unconsciously, for weeks, months, or even years. This isn't about blame or shame. It's about recognizing your power. Because if you've been unconsciously creating circumstances you don't want, that means you have the ability to consciously create circumstances you do want. The frustration you've been feeling, that sense that nothing's working no matter how hard you try, suddenly makes perfect sense through this lens. It's not that the universe is ignoring your prayers, or that you're somehow unlucky, or that you're being tested beyond what you can handle. It's that there's a mismatch between what you're consciously asking for and what you're unconsciously broadcasting. You're asking for abundance while broadcasting scarcity. You're asking for love while broadcasting unworthiness. You're asking for success while broadcasting doubt. And reality, being the perfect mirror that it is, can't deliver what you're asking for because it's responding to what you're actually transmitting. It's like ordering a chocolate cake while your frequency is broadcasting, "I'll take vanilla." The order doesn't match the signal, so reality delivers what the signal says, not what the words request. This is why affirmations alone don't work. This is why visualization by itself often fails. Because if your deeper frequency, the one operating beneath your conscious awareness, doesn't match what you're consciously trying to manifest, the conscious effort gets overridden by the unconscious broadcast. Understanding this changes your entire relationship with struggle and delay. Every moment that your desire hasn't manifested isn't evidence that it won't happen or that you're doing something wrong. It's feedback. It's information telling you that your frequency needs adjustment. The delay is actually a gift because it's giving you time to recognize the mismatch and correct it before you waste more years broadcasting the wrong signal. Think about how much energy you've spent being frustrated with reality for not delivering what you want. How much mental and emotional bandwidth you've burned resenting your circumstances, wondering why things aren't different, feeling victimized by life. All of that energy was misdirected because you were treating reality as if it were external and arbitrary, as if it were doing things to you rather than responding to you. But now you can redirect that energy where it actually matters, into becoming conscious of your frequency and deliberately shifting it to match what you want to experience. This is the transformation that makes everything else possible. When you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start recognizing yourself as an active participant, as the broadcaster of the signal that reality is faithfully reflecting, you reclaim your power. You're no longer waiting for external conditions to change. You're no longer hoping someone else will give you permission or opportunity. You're taking full responsibility for the frequency you're transmitting, knowing that when you change the signal, the reflection must change too. The journey from where you are to where you want to be isn't about convincing reality to give you something it's been withholding. It's about aligning your frequency so that reality has no choice but to reflect back what you're genuinely broadcasting. And that alignment starts with one simple recognition. You are not separate from what's showing up in your life. You are intimately connected to it through the frequency you transmit every single moment. Comment below, I'm the mirror and the reflection. So the question becomes, if there's a mismatch between what you want and what you're getting, how do you actually fix it? And this is where we need to get specific about what's creating your frequency in the first place. Because once you understand the exact components that make up your signal, you can start adjusting them with precision instead of just hoping something changes. Your frequency isn't some vague, untouchable energy floating around you. It's built from two very specific, very concrete elements that you interact with constantly throughout your day. The first is your thoughts, not just the surface-level ones you're aware of, but the deeper patterns running underneath. These are the mental movies you replay over and over, the internal narratives you've been telling yourself for so long they feel like objective truth. The pictures you hold in your mind when you imagine your future or reflect on your past. The second element is your words. And I'm not just talking about what you say to other people. I'm talking about the language you use when you're alone, the things you whisper to yourself under your breath when no one's listening, the automatic phrases that come out of your mouth without you even thinking about them. These two elements, thoughts and words, are the primary tools you have for consciously shaping your frequency. And here's what makes them so powerful. You have complete control over both of them. Most people don't realize this because these elements have been running on autopilot for so long. Your thought patterns were largely formed in childhood, reinforced by repeated experiences and solidified into habitual grooves that your mind defaults to without your conscious input. Your linguistic patterns are the same. You picked up certain phrases from your family, your culture, your peer group, and you've been repeating them so automatically that you don't even hear them anymore. But just because these patterns are habitual doesn't mean they're fixed. The moment you become aware of them, you gain the power to change them. Here's what's actually happening beneath the surface when these two elements are misaligned. Your thoughts might be painting one picture while your words are describing something completely different. You think about abundance and success, visualizing yourself living the life you want, but then you open your mouth and say things like, I can't afford that, or money's so tight right now, or nothing ever works out for me. You're essentially giving reality two completely different sets of instructions simultaneously, and when that happens, reality doesn't know which command to follow. The result is paralysis, stagnation, or at best, incremental progress, followed by immediate setbacks. This mismatch is the invisible barrier keeping most people stuck. They're not stuck because they lack opportunity or talent or resources. They're stuck because their internal signal is contradicting itself, creating static instead of a clear transmission. And reality, which responds to clarity and consistency, simply can't deliver anything coherent when the signal itself is incoherent. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this plays out in your actual daily experience, because awareness is the first step, but understanding the mechanics is what gives you leverage to change. Every single day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, you're generating thoughts and speaking words. Most of this happens so automatically that you barely notice it. But Each thought you think is creating a subtle shift in your emotional state, which is creating a shift in your energetic signature, which is contributing to your overall frequency. Each word you speak is reinforcing certain neural pathways in your brain, programming your subconscious mind to expect certain outcomes and broadcasting a signal into the field of possibility that surrounds you. When these two elements work together in harmony, when your thoughts and words are saying the same thing, you create what I call a unified frequency. This is when manifestation becomes almost effortless because there's no internal resistance, no contradiction, no mixed signals. Your whole being is broadcasting one clear message, and reality has no choice but to respond to that clarity with matching circumstances. But when your thoughts and words contradict each other, you create interference. It's like trying to listen to two radio stations at the same time. All you get is noise. And in that noise, nothing clear can come through. This is why you can work so hard and still feel like you're getting nowhere. The effort is there, but the signal is scrambled. Write in the comments, "My thoughts and words are becoming one." Think about what happens when you're driving a car and you press the gas pedal while simultaneously pressing the brake. The engine revs, energy is being generated, fuel is being burned, but the car doesn't move forward. Or worse, it jerks and stutters, making a little progress before grinding to a halt. All that energy, all that potential movement gets wasted in the conflict between two opposing forces. This is exactly what's happening inside you when your thoughts and words are broadcasting different frequencies. You wake up in the morning and think to yourself, "Today is going to be different. I'm going to attract the opportunities I've been waiting for." That thought generates a certain energy, a forward momentum. But then you check your email and there's nothing exciting there. You look at your bank account and the number hasn't changed, and before you know it, you're on the phone with a friend saying, "I don't know. Nothing ever seems to change for me. I keep trying, but I'm stuck in the same place." In that moment, you just hit the brake while your foot was still on the gas. The impact of this internal contradiction is far more devastating than most people realize. It's not just that you're not making progress, you're actually creating resistance, friction, an internal battle that drains your energy and confuses the signal you're sending to reality. Your conscious mind is trying to steer you in one direction, while your unconscious programming, expressed through your habitual language, is pulling you back to familiar territory. And in that tug of war, nothing can move forward cleanly. This is why so many people experience what I call the 1 step forward, 3 steps back pattern. They get a breakthrough, feel excited, see some progress, and then something happens that seems to undo all of it. They think it's bad luck or external circumstances, but what's really happening is that their frequency keeps shifting between alignment and misalignment. When they're focused and intentional, their thoughts and words briefly harmonize, and reality responds with a positive shift. But the moment they stop paying attention, they default back to their old patterns, their habitual language takes over, and they broadcast the same frequency that created their original circumstances. The hidden truth here is that your unconscious patterns are far more powerful than your conscious intentions because they've been practiced for so much longer. You've been thinking and speaking in certain patterns for years, maybe decades, and those patterns have deep grooves carved into your neural pathways. So when you try to override them with a few minutes of positive thinking or affirmations, it's like trying to redirect a river with a small stick. The conscious effort is there, but it's not strong enough to overcome the momentum of the unconscious pattern. This is where real transformation begins, not in adding more positive thoughts or saying more affirmations, but in becoming aware of the contradiction itself. Most people go through their entire lives without ever noticing that their inner world is at war with itself. They think the thoughts they're aware of are the only thoughts they're having. They don't realize that Beneath those surface thoughts, there's a constant stream of unconscious commentary, contradicting everything they're trying to create. When you start catching yourself in this contradiction, something shifts. You begin to hear the automatic phrases that come out of your mouth. You notice the mental pictures that flash through your mind when you think about your desires. You recognize the gap between what you say you want and what you're actually expecting to happen. And in that recognition, you gain the power to make a different choice. The journey from contradiction to harmony isn't about perfection. It's not about never having a negative thought or never speaking a limiting word. It's about becoming conscious enough to catch yourself when it happens and immediately course correct. It's about closing the gap between your conscious intentions and your unconscious patterns until they start speaking the same language, broadcasting the same frequency, giving reality one clear, unified command instead of two opposing instructions. When your thoughts and words finally align, when they start working together instead of against each other, you'll feel it. There's a sense of internal coherence, of wholeness, of power that comes from being unified within yourself. And that's when reality really starts responding, because for the first time, you're sending a signal that's strong enough and clear enough to cut through all the noise. Drop a comment. I choose coherence. So now that you understand the importance of alignment between thoughts and words, let me show you the two most common patterns that keep people trapped in the wrong frequency. And I guarantee you're going to recognize yourself in at least one of these, probably both, because these patterns are so deeply ingrained in how most people operate that they don't even realize they're doing it. The first pattern is what I call problem confirmation. This is when you notice something you don't like in your reality. Think about how difficult or frustrating it is, and then immediately verbally confirm it to yourself or others. Let me give you a specific example. You check your bank account and see it's lower than you'd hoped. In that moment, a thought crosses your mind. Things are really hard right now. That thought creates a feeling of heaviness, maybe some anxiety, definitely some stress. And then, because humans are social creatures who process experiences through communication, you call a friend or talk to your partner and you say out loud, "I'm so broke right now, I can't afford anything, money is just so tight." Do you see what just happened? You took an objective piece of information, a number in your bank account, and you wrapped it in a story of scarcity, confirmed that story with your thoughts, reinforced it with your emotions, and then sealed it into your frequency by speaking it out loud. In that moment, you weren't just observing your financial situation, you were actively broadcasting a frequency of lack, programming your unconscious mind to expect more lack, and instructing reality to deliver more circumstances that match that frequency of not having enough. And here's what makes this pattern so destructive. It feels natural. It feels like you're just being honest, just acknowledging what's true, just venting to someone who cares about you. But what you're actually doing is taking a temporary condition and cementing it into your frequency, ensuring that it persists. Every time you confirm your problems with both thoughts and words, you're giving them more energy, more life, more permission to continue showing up in your experience. But there's a second pattern that's even more insidious, because people think they're doing the right thing when they're actually sabotaging themselves. This is the pattern of unconscious contradiction. This happens when you've learned about manifestation. You understand that your thoughts and words matter. So you consciously try to speak positively about what you want. You start your day saying affirmations. Money flows to me easily. I am abundant. I attract prosperity effortlessly. And in that moment, you genuinely mean it. Your conscious mind is aligned with abundance. But then, just minutes or hours later, something happens that triggers your old programming. A friend invites you somewhere, and without even thinking, you automatically respond, "I can't. Things are really tight right now." Or you see Something you want and you immediately think, I can't afford that. Or someone asks how you're doing financially and you say, we're managing, but it's been tough. These responses happen so quickly, so automatically, that you don't even register them as contradictions to what you affirmed earlier. This second pattern is more dangerous than the first because it creates a psychological split. Your conscious mind is trying to move in one direction while your unconscious mind, operating through habitual language and automatic responses, is pulling you back to familiar territory. And when there's a split like this, the unconscious always wins. Not because it's more powerful, but because it's been in control for longer. It's had years, maybe decades, to establish its patterns, and a few conscious affirmations can't override that kind of momentum without consistent awareness and correction. What's happening behind the scenes is that you're essentially training reality to keep you exactly where you are. Every time you contradict yourself, every time your words don't match your stated intentions, you're sending a signal that says, I don't really believe what I'm affirming. What I actually believe is what comes out automatically. And reality, being the faithful mirror that it is, reflects that deeper belief back to you. The impact of these two patterns compounds over time. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, months into years of unconsciously broadcasting the same limiting frequency while consciously wondering why nothing changes. The frustration builds because you feel like you're trying so hard, you're doing all the right things, you're thinking positive thoughts, but somehow the breakthrough never comes. And the reason it doesn't come is because beneath the conscious effort, there's an unconscious pattern that's far more consistent, far more practiced, and therefore far more powerful in determining what frequency you're actually broadcasting. If you're catching yourself in these patterns, comment, I see both patterns in myself. So what's really happening when you're caught in this cycle of contradiction is that you're creating what psychologists would call a split in your psyche. On one side, there's your conscious mind with all its good intentions, its goals, its desires, its affirmations. This is the part of you that's actively trying to change, that reads books and watches videos like this one, that genuinely wants something different. But on the other side, there's your unconscious mind, carrying decades of programming, habitual responses, automatic beliefs that were installed long before you had the awareness to question them. And here's the uncomfortable truth that most people don't want to hear. When these two parts of your mind are in conflict, the unconscious wins every single time. Not because it's trying to sabotage you, or because it wants you to fail, but simply because it operates from a much deeper level. Your unconscious mind is the foundation, the bedrock, the operating system running beneath all your conscious activity. And no matter how hard your conscious mind tries to install a new program, if the operating system hasn't been updated, the new program won't run properly. This is why people can spend years trying to manifest something, doing all the exercises, saying all the affirmations, visualizing daily, and still not see results. They think they're not doing it right, or that they don't deserve it, or that manifestation doesn't work. But the real issue is that their conscious efforts are building a house on a foundation that's programmed for something entirely different. The foundation, the unconscious frequency, is what reality is actually responding to, regardless of what the conscious mind is trying to construct on top of it. Now let me reveal something that changes everything once you truly understand it. This split between conscious and unconscious, this misalignment between what you say you want and what you actually believe, is the hidden mechanism behind every single delayed manifestation you've ever experienced. Every goal that took longer than it should have. Every dream that felt just out of reach. Every desire that seemed to come close and then slip away at the last moment. It wasn't because you didn't work hard enough. It wasn't because you didn't deserve it. It wasn't because the timing wasn't right, or because the universe had other plans. It was because your inner narrative, The story your unconscious mind believes and broadcasts constantly didn't match your spoken intentions. You were essentially telling reality two different things simultaneously, and in that contradiction, nothing could clearly manifest. It's like trying to tune into a radio station while someone else is constantly changing the dial. You might catch a few seconds of clear signal, but then it shifts back to static before anything can fully come through. The impact of recognizing this and cannot be overstated, because once you see that the delay isn't about external factors, but about internal alignment, you stop looking outside yourself for answers. You stop waiting for circumstances to change, or for someone to give you permission, or for the perfect moment to arrive. You realize that the only thing standing between you and what you want is the gap between your conscious desires and your unconscious programming. This is the revelation that separates people who eventually break through from people who stay stuck for decades. The ones who break through aren't more talented or more deserving or more blessed. They simply become aware of this split and make it their mission to close the gap. They stop letting their unconscious programming run on autopilot. They start catching themselves every time they speak limitation. They notice when their automatic thoughts contradict their stated goals. And most importantly, they understand that manifestation isn't about adding more positive thoughts on top of negative beliefs. It's about transforming the foundation itself. The journey from where you are to where you want to be is really a journey from unconscious contradiction to conscious alignment. It's about bringing what's been operating in the shadows into the light, where you can actually work with it. Every moment of awareness, every time you catch yourself broadcasting the wrong frequency and consciously choose to shift it, you're literally rewiring your unconscious patterns. You're updating the operating system. You're changing the foundation so that what you consciously want and what you unconsciously expect finally start speaking the same language. Leave a comment saying, "I'm closing the gap." And here's where this gets even more critical to understand, because the effect of this misalignment isn't neutral. It's not just that your desires stay in the same place, frozen in time, waiting patiently for you to figure things out. The misalignment actually creates an active repelling force. You become like a magnet that's been flipped the wrong way, pushing away the very things you're trying to attract. Every time you contradict yourself, every time your words don't match your inner state, you're essentially telling reality to keep your desires at a distance. Think about what happens energetically when you say you want abundance, but then immediately speak and think from scarcity. You're not just failing to attract abundance, you're actively broadcasting a frequency that repels it. Opportunities that could have found you pass by unnoticed. People who could have helped you don't feel drawn to reach out. Resources that could have flowed to you go elsewhere, not because the universe is punishing you, but because your frequency is literally pushing these things away before they can get close enough to manifest. This is the hidden cost of unconscious contradiction that no one talks about. People think the worst-case scenario is that manifestation just takes longer, that eventually, if you keep trying, you'll get there. But what's actually happening is that every day you operate in misalignment, you're reinforcing the pattern that keeps you separated from what you want. You're not just delaying the breakthrough, you're strengthening the very forces that prevent it from happening. The transformation that needs to occur isn't what most people think. They assume they need to work harder, push more, do more affirmations, visualize longer, take more action. But all of that is operating at the surface level, and the problem is much deeper. The real work, the work that actually changes everything, is about becoming what I call the guardian of your own frequency. This isn't about hustling or forcing or trying to control outcomes through sheer willpower. It's about developing a subtle but incredibly powerful awareness of what you're broadcasting moment to moment. Being a guardian means you start paying attention to the things You've been letting run on autopilot for years. You notice the automatic phrases that come out of your mouth. You catch the mental movies that play in the background of your mind. You become aware of the emotional undertones that color your words, even when you're trying to say the right things. This level of awareness requires a different kind of energy than most people are used to applying. It's not forceful, it's not aggressive, it's gentle, persistent, vigilant observation. What happens when you step into this role of guardian is that you create space between stimulus and response. Something happens. You check your bank account, you receive unexpected news, you face a challenge, and instead of immediately reacting with your old patterns, there's a pause. In that pause, you have a choice. You can default to the automatic response that confirms your old frequency, or you can consciously choose a response that aligns with the frequency you're trying to cultivate. This is where real power lives, in that space between what happens and how you respond to it. Most people never even know that space exists because they're so conditioned to react automatically. But once you become the guardian of your frequency, you start living in that space. You start exercising conscious choice about what thoughts you entertain, what words you speak, what emotional states you allow to take root. Now, I want to go even deeper into what this guardianship actually looks like in practice, because understanding the concept is one thing, but implementing it in your daily life is where the real transformation happens. The guardian isn't trying to be perfect or to never have a negative thought. The guardian is simply aware, watchful, ready to course correct the moment they notice they've slipped into an old pattern. It's not about judgment or self-criticism. It's about loving awareness that gently redirects your frequency back to alignment every single time it drifts. Comment below. I am the guardian of my frequency. So let's talk about what's really happening every time you open your mouth and speak. Most people treat their words as if they're just sounds that disappear into the air, temporary expressions that have no lasting impact beyond the immediate conversation. But that's not how it works at all. Every single sentence you speak is doing something far more significant than you realize. It's programming your future conditions. Your words aren't just describing your reality. They're actively creating it. Think of your words as seeds. Every time you speak, you're planting something in the fertile soil of your unconscious mind and in the invisible field of possibility that surrounds you. Some people plant seeds of abundance, possibility, and growth. Others plant seeds of limitation, lack, and struggle. And here's the critical part that most people miss. You don't see the results immediately. You plant a seed today, and nothing visible happens. You plant another seed tomorrow, and still nothing breaks through the surface. So you assume your words don't matter, that they're inconsequential, that what you say has no real power. But beneath the surface, where you can't see, those seeds are germinating. They're taking root. They're growing quietly, steadily, drawing nutrients from your repeated thoughts and emotions, establishing themselves in the deep soil of your subconscious programming. And eventually, inevitably, they break through the surface and become your lived experience. The words you spoke months ago, the phrases you've been repeating for years, they're all growing into the circumstances you're experiencing right now. This is the invisible mechanism that connects your language to your reality, and it operates on a time delay that makes it almost impossible to trace unless you're paying attention. You complain about money being tight in January, and by March, you're facing an unexpected expense. You say, "I never catch a break," in the spring, and by summer you're dealing with a series of frustrating setbacks. You speak about relationships being difficult, and months later you find yourself in exactly the kind of difficult relationship you described. The connection isn't obvious because there's a gap between the planting and the harvest, but the connection is absolute. Behind the scenes of every limitation you're experiencing, there's a linguistic pattern you've been repeating. Behind every recurring problem, There's a phrase you keep saying. Behind every stuck area of your life, there's a story you keep telling. And the reason these things persist isn't because they're true or because that's just how life is. It's because you keep planting the same seeds with your words, ensuring that the same crops keep growing in your experience. The impact of understanding this is enormous because it means you have far more power than you thought. If your words are programming your future, then you can deliberately choose different words and program a different future. But here's where most people stumble. They try to change their words at the surface level without addressing the deeper beliefs driving those words. They try to plant positive seeds on top of soil that's already full of negative seeds from years of unconscious planting. What needs to happen is a complete transformation of your relationship with language. You need to start treating every word you speak as if it matters. Because it does. You need to catch yourself in the middle of planting seeds of limitation and consciously choose to plant something different. This requires vigilance, awareness, and a willingness to interrupt your own habitual patterns, even when they feel natural and automatic. The journey from unconscious language to conscious creation isn't comfortable. It means noticing how often you complain, how frequently you speak from lack, how automatically you confirm your problems with your words. It means recognizing that casual phrases you've been throwing around for years, "I'm so broke, I can never, that's just my luck, nothing ever works out," aren't harmless expressions. They're planting instructions, programming code, seeds that will inevitably grow into matching experiences. Every time you catch yourself about to speak from limitation and you pause, reconsider, and choose different words, you're pulling up an old seed before it can fully root and planting a new one in its place. Do this enough times, with enough consistency, and you'll start noticing something remarkable. The landscape of your life begins to change. Different circumstances start appearing. New opportunities emerge. The recurring problems that seemed permanent start dissolving. Write in the comments, "My words are creating my future." So the question becomes, how do you actually catch these patterns in real time? Because awareness is one thing, but implementing that awareness in the moment, when your automatic responses are trying to take over, is where the real transformation happens. And this is where most people struggle, because these limiting phrases have been part of their vocabulary for so long that they don't even register as significant anymore. They feel like simple observations, innocent complaints, just venting about a rough day. But here's what you need to understand about how your unconscious mind actually works. It doesn't have the ability to distinguish between a casual complaint and a serious declaration. It doesn't know the difference between you venting to a friend and you issuing a command about what you want to experience. Your unconscious mind is incredibly obedient, but it's also incredibly literal. When you say, "I never catch a break," your unconscious doesn't interpret that as you just having a bad day. It receives that statement as an instruction, as a definition of who you are and how reality works for you. And then it goes to work making that statement true. It filters your perception so you notice all the times things don't work out and overlook the times they do. It influences your decisions so you unconsciously avoid opportunities that might actually be your break. It shapes your expectations so that even when something good is approaching, you're already braced for it to fall through. Your unconscious mind is literally organizing your entire reality around the phrases you keep repeating, treating them as the fundamental operating principles for how your life should function. This is why transformation doesn't happen through positive thinking alone. You can't just paste affirmations over deeply rooted, limiting phrases and expect everything to change. What you have to do is catch yourself in the act of issuing these commands and immediately interrupt the pattern. The moment you hear yourself say, "I'm always struggling with money," or "nothing ever works out for me," or "I can never seem to get ahead," you need to stop, recognize what just happened, and consciously speak something different. This isn't about being fake or pretending everything's perfect when it's not. It's about refusing to keep programming your unconscious mind with instructions that create more of what you don't want. It's about taking responsibility for the fact that your casual words are having serious consequences and choosing to speak from where you want to go rather than where you've been. The hidden truth here is that most people defend their right to complain, to vent, to speak their frustrations. They think it's healthy to express what's wrong, to be honest about their struggles, to commiserate with others about how hard life is. And while there's value in processing emotions and seeking support, there's a massive difference between mindfully expressing a temporary feeling and habitually reinforcing a limiting identity through your language. Every time you say, "I'm always," or "I never," or "things are constantly," you're not describing a fixed reality. You're creating one. You're taking a pattern that could be temporary and cementing it into permanence through the power of your declaration. Your unconscious mind hears "always" and "never" as absolute commands, and it responds by making sure those patterns continue indefinitely. Now, I want to go even deeper into what it means to become vigilant about your language, because this vigilance is the bridge between understanding these concepts intellectually and actually transforming your frequency. Vigilance doesn't mean being paranoid or walking on eggshells, afraid to speak. It means developing a heightened awareness of the gap between what you're about to say and what you actually want to create. It means pausing for just a second before words leave your mouth and asking yourself, is this planting a seed I want to grow? When you cultivate this kind of awareness, something remarkable starts happening. You begin to hear yourself differently. Phrases that used to seem completely normal suddenly sound jarring when you notice what they're actually programming. You catch yourself mid-sentence and realize you're about to issue another limiting command to your unconscious mind. And in that moment of recognition, you have the power to choose differently. Drop a comment, "I'm becoming vigilant." But words are only half of the equation, and this is where we need to shift our attention to something even more subtle but equally powerful. Your frequency isn't just shaped by what you say out loud or even what you consciously think in language. There's another dimension operating beneath the surface of your awareness that's constantly creating your reality, and most people have no idea they're even engaging with it. I'm talking about the mental pictures that run on repeat in your mind, the internal movies you watch over and over again without ever questioning their content. These mental images are the bridge between your conscious intentions and your unconscious programming. While your words are important, your imagination is actually the language your subconscious mind speaks most fluently. Think about it. When you remember something from your past, you don't just recall words. You see images, you replay scenes, you revisit moments as if you're watching them on an internal screen. And when you think about your future, you're doing the same thing. You're creating mental pictures of what you expect to happen, what you fear might happen, what you hope will happen. Here's what most people don't realize. These mental pictures aren't passive observations. They're active blueprints. Every image you hold in your mind and revisit repeatedly is being treated by your subconscious as an architectural plan, a set of instructions for what to build in your physical reality. Your subconscious doesn't distinguish between a memory, a fear, and a desire. It simply takes the images you're feeding it most consistently and says, "Okay, this must be what we're creating. Let me organize circumstances to match these pictures." So if you spend your mental energy replaying scenes of rejection, imagining conversations where you're criticized or dismissed, picturing yourself struggling or failing, rehearsing scenarios where things go wrong, you're literally handing your subconscious the blueprints for more of those experiences. It's not being cruel or punishing you, it's being obedient. It's taking the plans you keep showing it and faithfully constructing, matching circumstances in your outer world. The impact of this revelation is staggering when you really sit with it, because it means that most people are unconsciously designing the very experiences they don't want through the mental pictures they habitually rehearse. They wonder why they keep attracting the same type of difficult people, why the same problems keep showing up in different forms, why they can't seem to break out of certain patterns. And the answer is right there in their inner vision. They've been watching the same mental movies so many times that their subconscious has accepted them as the template for reality. Behind the scenes of every recurring problem in your life, there's a mental picture you've been rehearsing. Behind every limitation that feels permanent, there's an image you keep revisiting. You might not be doing it consciously. In fact, most people aren't aware they're doing it at all. But your imagination never stops working. It's always creating, always generating images. And if you're not consciously directing it toward what you want, it defaults to replaying what you've experienced, what you fear, or what you've been conditioned to expect. The transformation begins when you start paying attention to the mental movies playing in the background of your consciousness. What scenes do you catch yourself replaying throughout the day? When you think about that important meeting, that difficult conversation, that financial situation, what images come up? Are you seeing yourself succeeding, thriving, receiving what you want? Or are you seeing yourself struggling, being rejected, coming up short? Most people, if they're honest, will admit they spend far more time mentally rehearsing worst-case scenarios than best-case outcomes. They call it being realistic, or preparing for disappointment, or protecting themselves. But what they're actually doing is handing their subconscious detailed blueprints for experiences they definitely don't want, and then wondering why those experiences keep manifesting. Your imagination is perhaps the most powerful tool you have for shifting your frequency, but only if you start using it deliberately instead of letting it run on autopilot. The journey from unconscious creation to conscious manifestation requires you to become the director of your inner movies rather than a passive viewer of whatever scenes your conditioned mind decides to replay. Comment: I'm directing my inner vision. So once you recognize that your mental pictures are creating your reality, the obvious next question is, how do you actually change them? And this is where the practice becomes deeply personal and incredibly powerful. You can't just decide to stop thinking negative thoughts or force yourself to only see positive outcomes. That kind of approach creates resistance and usually backfires. What you need to do instead is deliberately, consciously choose to create new mental pictures and then inhabit them so fully that they become more familiar to your subconscious than the old ones. Let me walk you through what this actually looks like. Right now, think about one specific desire you have. Maybe it's financial freedom, maybe it's vibrant health, maybe it's a loving relationship, maybe it's meaningful work. Whatever it is, I want you to create a mental picture of yourself already living in that reality. Not trying to achieve it, not hoping for it, not working toward it, actually living it. See yourself in that state as if it's happening right now in this moment. But here's where most people make a critical mistake, and it's why their visualization practice doesn't work. They glance at the image like they're flipping through a magazine. They see themselves successful or abundant or healthy for a few seconds, feel a little emotional charge, and then move on with their day. That superficial engagement doesn't create the kind of deep imprint necessary to shift your frequency. Your subconscious needs more than a passing glance. It needs immersion. What you have to do is sit inside the mental picture. Close your eyes and don't just observe the scene from the outside. Step into it as if you're actually there. Feel the temperature of the room. Notice what you're wearing. What textures do you feel against your skin? What sounds are around you? Is there music playing? Are there voices? What does the air smell like in this version of your reality where your desire is already fulfilled? These sensory details are what make the difference between a fantasy and a blueprint that your subconscious can actually work with. The more familiar this inner picture becomes, the more your subconscious starts treating it as real. And here's the hidden mechanism at work. Your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience and an actual lived experience. When you inhabit a mental picture with enough sensory detail and emotional authenticity, your brain starts encoding it as a memory rather than a fantasy. And once it's encoded as a memory, your subconscious says, "Oh, this is who we are. This is what we do. This is our reality." This is why athletes mentally rehearse their performances with such specificity. They're not just hoping to do well, they're programming their nervous system to execute movements their body hasn't physically performed yet. They see themselves making the shot, feel the ball leaving their hands, hear the crowd's reaction, experience the sensation of success so many times in their imagination that when the actual moment comes, their body already knows what to do because the subconscious has already lived it hundreds of times. You need to apply this same principle to your desires. Don't just think about what you want in abstract terms. Live it in your imagination with such specificity that it starts to feel more real than your current circumstances. Spend time each day inhabiting this inner reality, adding more details, feeling it more deeply, making it more familiar. The transformation happens when the vision becomes so familiar that your current reality starts feeling like the temporary state, and your inner vision feels like home. Now, I want to go even deeper into why this familiarity is so crucial, because it's not just about tricking your mind or playing pretend. What you're actually doing is shifting your identity at the subconscious level. Your current reality feels comfortable not because it's good, but because it's familiar. Your brain is wired to seek familiarity over novelty, even when the familiar thing is painful or limiting. So when you make a new reality familiar through repeated imaginative immersion, you're literally rewiring your brain's comfort zone. Write in the comments, "I'm making my vision familiar." But here's where most people completely sabotage themselves, even after they've learned to direct their inner vision and create vivid mental pictures of what they want. They do all the inner work, they visualize daily. They're becoming guardians of their frequency, and then they make one fatal mistake that keeps everything they desire just out of reach. They wait. They want to see the evidence first, before they allow themselves to feel the fulfillment. Let me show you exactly how this plays out. Someone wants financial abundance, so they visualize it. They speak positively about money. They're doing everything right. But then they check their bank account and the number hasn't changed yet, so they think, well, I'll be grateful when the money actually shows up. I'll celebrate when I see real proof. I'll feel abundant when there's evidence. And in that moment of waiting, they've completely collapsed their frequency back to lack. This is the backwards approach that keeps most people stuck for years. They think gratitude is something you give after you receive, like a thank you note you send when a gift arrives. But that's not how frequency works. That's not how the invisible mechanics of manifestation operate. Gratitude isn't the response to receiving. Gratitude is the signal that you've already received it on the level that actually matters, which is the level of consciousness, the level of frequency, the level where all physical manifestation originates. When you say thank you, it's already mine before there's any physical proof. You're not being delusional or engaging in wishful thinking. You're tuning your frequency to reception. You're telling your subconscious mind and the field of reality itself that you're no longer in a state of wanting or waiting. You're in a state of having, and it's that state of having, that feeling of already being in possession of what you desire, that creates the magnetic pull which draws the physical manifestation toward you. Think about the difference in frequency between someone who's desperately hoping something will show up and someone who's calmly expecting it because they know it's already theirs. The first person broadcasts lack, anxiety, uncertainty. Their energy is contracted, reaching outward, grasping. The second person broadcasts confidence, certainty, receptivity. Their energy is expanded, open, welcoming. Reality responds to these two frequencies in completely different ways. The hidden truth here is that most people have the entire process backwards. They're operating on a seeing is believing paradigm, when manifestation actually works on a believing is seeing principle. The physical evidence is always the last thing to show up. It's the final domino in a chain reaction that starts in consciousness, moves through frequency, influences perception and behavior, and eventually materializes in physical form. But if you wait for the physical evidence before you shift your frequency, you're essentially asking the last domino to fall before you've even touched the first one. This is why trust is such a critical component of shifting your frequency. Not blind faith or naive optimism, but genuine trust in the process. Trust that when you align your thoughts, words, and mental pictures with what you desire, reality must respond. Trust that the invisible mechanics are working even when you can't see the results yet. Trust that your gratitude now is valid, even though the physical manifestation hasn't appeared. The transformation happens when you stop making your emotional state dependent on external evidence. When you can feel abundant before the money arrives, feel loved before the relationship manifests, feel successful before the achievement is recognized, feel healthy before the symptoms disappear. That's when you've truly shifted your frequency, because you're no longer broadcasting, "I need this to feel complete." You're broadcasting, "I am complete, and this is simply the natural extension of who I already am." Behind the scenes, what's happening is that your frequency of gratitude creates an energetic opening. It's like tuning a radio to the exact station where your desire is broadcasting. When you're in a state of lack and longing, you're tuned to a completely different station. You might be hoping for abundance, but you're tuned to the scarcity channel. Gratitude before receiving is how you change the channel to match what you're actually trying to attract. Leave a comment. I'm grateful before the evidence. And when you operate from this place of gratitude before evidence, something remarkable happens that most people never experience because they never make it past the waiting stage. That signal of trust, that vibration of certainty you're broadcasting, creates an actual opening in the field of possibility. It's like you're sending out a beacon that says, "I'm ready, I'm aligned, I'm no longer resisting or doubting or second-guessing. I'm simply here in a state of receptivity, knowing that what's mine is already making its way to me." Your unconscious mind receives this signal and interprets it as permission to start reorganizing your reality. Remember, your subconscious is always listening, always responding, always working to create circumstances that match your dominant frequency. When you broadcast uncertainty and lack, it creates circumstances that justify more uncertainty and lack. But when you broadcast certainty and fulfillment, even before physical evidence appears, you're giving your unconscious completely different instructions. You're essentially saying, "We're not waiting anymore. We're not in a state of needing. We already have this. Now show me how it manifests in physical form." This is where the concept of collapsing time comes into play, and it's one of the most powerful principles you can understand about how manifestation actually works. Most people think of manifestation as a linear process with a fixed timeline. You want something, you work toward it, time passes, and eventually it either shows up or it doesn't. But that's not how the deeper mechanics function. Time, in the context of manifestation, is far more fluid than most people realize. It's directly influenced by the consistency and clarity of your frequency. When you acknowledge something as already done within your unconscious realm, When you feel it as real in your inner world, it begins to multiply in your outer world. It's as if you're planting a fully grown tree in the fertile soil of your subconscious, rather than starting with a seed. The manifestation doesn't have to go through all the normal developmental stages, because you've already completed those stages in consciousness. You've already lived it, felt it, known it, been grateful for it. So the time between desire and delivery gets compressed, sometimes dramatically. This is why some people manifest things almost instantly, while others wait years for the same result. It's not about worthiness or luck. It's about the ability to hold the frequency of already having before the physical evidence appears. The person who can genuinely feel grateful now, who can trust now, who can operate from certainty now, they're collapsing the time gap. They're not waiting for reality to catch up to their desire. They're bringing their consciousness into alignment with their desire so completely that reality has no choice but to reorganize itself around that alignment. The impact of understanding this changes everything about how you approach your goals and desires. You stop measuring progress by external markers. You stop checking for evidence every day to see if it's working. You stop oscillating between hope and disappointment based on what you can see physically. Instead, you measure your progress by how consistently you can hold the frequency of already having what you want. You measure success by how naturally gratitude flows before evidence. You track your transformation by how much trust you can maintain even when nothing visible has changed yet. Behind the scenes, what's happening is that your frequency of certainty is quite literally rearranging the field of potential outcomes. Reality isn't fixed. It's responsive, fluid, constantly organizing itself based on the signals it receives from consciousness. When you broadcast, "I'm waiting to see if this works," you're keeping your desired outcome in the realm of possibility rather than pulling it into probability. But when you broadcast, "This is already done, I'm just watching it unfold," you're collapsing the wave of potential into a specific manifestation. Pathway. The journey from desire to manifestation isn't about time, it's about frequency. You can want something for 10 years and never get it if your frequency stays in lack. Or you can shift your frequency to certainty and gratitude and watch it appear in weeks or even days. The external timeline is just a reflection of the internal alignment. Comment below, "I'm collapsing time with certainty." So now we've covered all the individual pieces: your thoughts, your words, your mental pictures, your gratitude, your trust. But here's where everything comes together into something far more powerful than any single element on its own. When all of these components finally align, when your conscious intention matches your unconscious patterns, when the words leaving your mouth reflect the images in your mind, when your thoughts harmonize with your spoken language, you create what can only be described as a unified field. This unified field is a state of total coherence where every level of your being is broadcasting the same message. There's no internal contradiction, no split between what you want and what you expect, no gap between what you affirm and what you actually believe. Your entire psyche becomes like a perfectly tuned instrument, playing one clear, powerful note. And when you reach this state of unity, reality has no choice but to respond. It's not a matter of if, it's simply a matter of when the physical manifestation catches up to the frequency you're holding. Think about what happens when a laser beam focuses all its light in one direction versus when light scatters in multiple directions. Scattered light is weak, diffuse, unable to penetrate or transform anything. But a focused laser beam can cut through steel. The difference isn't the amount of energy, it's the coherence, the unity of direction. Your frequency works the same way. When all your mental and emotional energy is scattered across contradictory thoughts, words, and images, you have no real power to shape your reality. But when everything aligns into one unified frequency, you become an unstoppable force of creation. The transformation that happens when you reach this unified state is profound and often surprising. You stop feeling like you have to chase your desires. Stop trying to force outcomes through sheer willpower. Stop desperately reaching for what feels just out of grasp. Instead, you settle into a completely different way of being. You tune in to the frequency of what you want and simply hold it consistently without wavering. And from that place of alignment, you watch with genuine amazement as reality begins reorganizing itself around you. Opportunities you weren't even looking for suddenly appear. People who can help you show up at exactly the right time. Resources flow in ways you couldn't have predicted or planned. Synchronicities multiply to the point where they stop feeling like coincidences and start feeling like confirmations that you're on the right path. This isn't magic or luck. It's the natural result of broadcasting a clear, unified frequency that reality can easily read and respond to. Behind the scenes, what's happening is that you've eliminated the resistance that was keeping your desires at a distance. That resistance was never external. It was always the internal contradiction between different parts of your consciousness pulling in different directions. When you become unified, that resistance dissolves. There's nothing blocking the flow anymore. Your desires don't have to fight their way past your doubts, fears, and limiting beliefs. They have a clear pathway from the realm of possibility into physical manifestation. The journey from scattered frequency to unified field is really the journey from unconscious creation to conscious mastery. You stop being a passive recipient of whatever circumstances your habitual patterns generate, and you become an active, intentional creator of your experience. You're no longer at the mercy of your conditioning or your past or your circumstances. You've taken full ownership of the signal you're broadcasting, and in doing so, you've reclaimed your power to shape your reality. This is the shift that separates people who occasionally manifest things from people who consistently live in flow. The ones who stay in flow aren't doing anything dramatically different on the surface. They're not working harder or knowing secret techniques. They're simply maintaining a unified frequency. All their inner channels are broadcasting the same signal, and reality responds to that clarity with matching clarity. When you become one coherent frequency, everything changes. Not because reality suddenly decides to favor you, but because you've finally learned to speak the language reality understands. You've aligned yourself with the way manifestation actually works, rather than fighting against it with mixed signals and internal contradictions. Drop a comment. I am becoming one frequency. If you've made it this far, I already know something important about you. You're not just casually consuming content. You're genuinely ready for this shift. You stayed because something in this message resonated at a level that goes beyond intellectual understanding. And that tells me you're exactly the kind of person who's going to actually apply what you've learned here, not just think about it. So here's what I want you to do. If this video gave you clarity, if something clicked, if you feel like you finally understand why things have been the way they've been, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps me know this message is landing where it needs to, and honestly, it helps other people who are searching for these answers find their way here too. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is your moment. I'm creating content specifically for people who want to understand the real mechanics behind how consciousness shapes reality. Not surface-level motivation, but the actual principles that work when you apply them consistently. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next, because we're going even deeper into these frequencies and how to master them. Leave me a comment right now saying, "This message was meant for me." I read every single one, and I want to know this reached you at exactly the right time. And listen, there's another video right here that takes what we just covered and shows you the next layer, the part that most people miss even after they Understand the basics. Click on it and continue this journey with me over there. I'll see you in the next one.